All right. Good afternoon, everyone. The Secretary General is back in Madrid at the UN Climate Change Conference, known as COP25. Today, he spoke at the high-level event on global climate action, where he called on the world's biggest emitters to do much more on climate, warning that if we do not reach carbon neutrality by 2050, all our current efforts to promote sustainable development will be undermined. The Secretary General stressed that in 2020, we must deliver what the scientific community has defined as a must, or we and every generation that follows will pay an unbearable price. He also laid out his 10 priorities to tackle the climate crisis, which include securing commitments from the main emitters of more ambitious national commitments by 2020, ensuring that all governments follow the example of the 75 countries that committed to coming forward by next year with net zero emission strategies for 2050, and ensuring that national commitments include a just transition for people whose jobs and livelihoods are affected as we move from the gray to the green economy. He urged the participants at COP25 to stand firm, work together, and refuse to relent in this fight for our lives. The Secretary General also spoke at the high-level event on caring for climate, organized by the Global Compact, where he called on businesses to unite behind the science by taking rapid and ambitious action to tackle the climate crisis. He also urged private sector leaders to challenge their governments to enable businesses in the financial sector to invest decisively in a net zero future. And at that same event, it was announced that the size of the Business Ambition Alliance has increased from 90 businesses at the Climate Action Summit in September to 177 now. These businesses comprise almost 6 million employees. In addition, there's been a major jump in investors in the Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance, from $2.4 trillion at the Climate Summit to nearly $4 trillion now. And the Secretary General has continued to meet with ministers at the COP and will continue to do so over the next few days. Undersecretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs Rosemary DiCarlo will visit Ukraine from the 12th to the 13th of December 2019. In Kyiv, Ms. DiCarlo will hold talks with Ukrainian authorities, representatives of United Nations agencies, and partner civil society organizations, including groups representing internally displaced persons, women, and youth. And yesterday, we issued the following statement, saying that the Secretary General welcomes the outcome of the meetings of the leaders of France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine, the Normandy 4, held on the 9th of December in Paris. He reaffirms the strong support of the United Nations for the lead role of the member countries of the Normandy 4, the OSCE Trilateral Contact Group, and the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, in the framework of the Minsk Agreements. The Secretary General calls on all concerned to redouble their efforts to build on recent progress towards the resolution of the conflict. He reiterates his full support for the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. The Government of Palestine, the United Nations, and humanitarian organizations today launched the Humanitarian Response Plan for 2020 in the occupied Palestinian territory, which seeks $348 million to provide assistance to 1.5 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Humanitarian coordinator Jamie McGoldrick said that half of all Palestinians living in the area are in need of humanitarian assistance and protection, and the plan for 2020 prioritizes aid to those in greatest need. About 76% of the requested funds target Gaza, where the situation remains extremely fragile, with almost half the population unemployed and an estimated 62% of households facing food insecurity. Meanwhile, in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, settlement activity and related violence, loss of land, destruction of property, and movement restrictions impede access to basic services and livelihoods for Palestinians. We have an update from Burkina Faso, where people are facing an unprecedented protection crisis as a result of spiraling insecurity and the erosion of access to basic services in regions along the borders with Mali and Niger. Currently, nearly one-third of the population is affected by the crisis. Next year, some 2.2 million people will require life-saving humanitarian assistance, nearly double the 1.2 million people in need at the start of 2019. Burkina Faso has become one of the fastest-growing displacement crises in Africa. From January to October, the number of internally displaced persons has increased by 934%, from 87,000 to 486,000 people. Last week alone, some 7,000 people were displaced from one community in the eastern part of the country. The UN and humanitarian partners are supporting the response by providing emergency food to the displaced. The 2020 Humanitarian Response Plan for Burkina Faso is requesting $295 million to assist 1.8 million people. This morning, the Security Council held a debate on the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals. At 3 p.m. this afternoon, the Council will hold an open meeting on non-proliferation and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The number of children whose births are officially registered has increased significantly worldwide, yet 166 million children under 5, or 1 in 4, remain unregistered. According to a new report released by UNICEF today, which analyzes data from 174 countries, the proportion of children under 5 registered globally is up around 20% from 10 years ago, increasing from 63% to 75%. Global progress is driven largely by great strides in South Asia, particularly in Bangladesh, India, and Nepal. By contrast, the majority of countries in sub-Saharan Africa lag behind the rest of the world, with Ethiopia, Zambia, and Chad recording the lowest levels of registered births globally. The full report is available online. I would also like to congratulate UNICEF, which is celebrating its 73rd anniversary today. Happy birthday, UNICEF. And today is International Mountain Day. This UN observance aims to highlight that mountains are home to 15% of the world's population and a quarter of the world's land, animals, and plants, and providing fresh water for everyday life to half of humanity. Their conservation is therefore a key factor for sustainable development and is part of Goal 15 of the Sustainable Development Goals. However, mountains are under threat from climate change and overexploitation. This year's theme is Mountains Matter for Youth, to highlight that for rural youth, living in the mountains can be hard. Migration from the mountains leads to abandoned agriculture, land degradation, and a loss of ancient cultural traditions. And today we thank Bangladesh for its full payment to the UN's regular budget. This payment takes us to 140 fully paid up member states. That's it for me. Do we have any questions? Yes, please. Betul.
Thank you, Farhan. Today, Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi was at The Hague at the International Court of Justice defending her country and the army, which is accused of ethnic cleansing of the Rohingyas. And I was wondering if the UN has any reaction or anything to say on that.
Well, we have already expressed our views concerning the situation of the Rohingya, and now the matter is in the hands of the International Court of Justice, and we trust and expect that our colleagues in the International Court of Justice will give this matter a full hearing.
Can I just follow up? She also said that the case against her country was incomplete and incorrect. What do you have to say on that?
This is a matter that is before the judges of the International Court of Justice, and we'll leave the matter in their hands for this moment. Yes, please.
Yes. Can you tell us if the Secretary General received the letter from Athens from the Greek government concerning the illegal maritime agreement between Turkey and Libya?
Yes, I can confirm that we received that letter on the 9th of December, and it's being studied. Regarding the Secretariat's views, the Secretariat doesn't take a position or provide comments in relation to matters concerning the sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction of member states over their maritime spaces. However, in certain areas, such as enclosed or semi-enclosed seas, particular attention needs to be paid to the interests of third parties. We're confident that all parties concerned recognize the need for continued dialogue on these sensitive matters. Needless to say that in accordance with the principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, all differences should be resolved by peaceful means. Yes, Abdulhamid.
So first, do you agree that, does the SG feel that this agreement reached between Turkey and the National Council of Libyan Government of National Accord is legal and binding? Does Mr. Sarraj have the authority, in the view of the SG and the UN, to conclude such an agreement? Is there any illegal about it? Is there any
Well, you heard what I just said regarding the fact that in certain areas, such as enclosed or semi-enclosed seas, particular attention needs to be paid to the interests of third parties. To repeat, we are confident that all parties concerned recognize the need for continued dialogue on these sensitive matters, and of course we want it to be resolved through peaceful means.
No, the issue that it was raised by a number of countries, including Egypt, that this agreement is illegal, and Mr. Sarraj has no authority to conclude such an agreement. What is the views of the Secretary on this agreement? I mean, the bilateral agreement between Turkey and the National Accord government of Mr. Sarraj?
We're studying the information that we've received. For now, what I have to say is what I've said. Yes, please.
Can I ask another question? Is the Secretary General is going to accept this illegal document as legal? It's very important to tell us.
You and your colleague should have a conversation with each other. I seem to be hearing completely different views about the legality of this, which neatly sums up the position we're in right now. Yes, Maggie.
Farhan, yesterday you read out some stuff on DRC, and you said that Mr. Tedros from WHO was concerned about the safety of health workers related to the Ebola in Congo, and he wanted better security for them. I think that was the bottom line of your statement yesterday. There's been some criticism of WHO and the humanitarian community and the wider humanitarian community because they've allegedly been paying armed security escorts to help them in Congo, including in some cases armed groups. And I wondered if the Secretary General has any opinion on that or any guidelines, because other humanitarians are saying it's compromising everybody's impartiality.
First of all, we do want to stress, as we have done repeatedly, the impartiality of the health workers in the area. Their priority, and their only priority, is to make sure that all people, regardless of the activities of different groups in the area, that all people are kept safe from the threat posed by Ebola. And it is to that end that they are doing the activities that they're doing, including contact tracing and vaccinations and other both preventative and curative actions. For that, they need to be protected. Obviously, in their effort to ensure their staff protection, we implore all groups not to attack these humanitarian workers and health workers. And beyond that, I would refer you to the World Health Organization. Sherwin?
Farhan, does the Secretary General have any reaction to Greta Thunberg being named Time Person of the Year?
Well, the Secretary General is, as you've seen from what he said in recent months, very proud of Ms. Thunberg and the work she's done. But it's not just her. As I understand it, this is a recognition of the effect that youth have been having on this debate. And the Secretary General has been very clear about the need for the world's leaders to listen to youth. It is their world that we are currently damaging through our inaction and our delayed action. One day, they will be the inheritors of the world that we have left for them, and we need to make sure that we have done right by them. And it's good to see recognition, both of the powerful role they can have when they make their voices heard, and of the importance of listening to them. Yes, Maria.
Thank you, Farhan. Yesterday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held negotiations with American authorities, including American President. So one of the point of discussions was the extending of New START treaty, and it seems there is still no understanding if it can be extended or bilaterally, or if there will be needed participation of China, France, Germany, Britain. Sorry, not Germany. So, is there any SG comment on that?
Well, you are aware that we've, in the past, voiced our support for the existence of this treaty and wanted to see its terms continued. If there can be any progress between Russia and the United States in their discussions in terms of making sure that this agreement and its principles can be upheld, that would be a welcome step forward. Yes.
Back to Libya. I mean, Mr. Ghassan Salama yesterday or the day before, I think he tweeted saying that General Haftar is determined to occupy the capital of Tripoli by force, and that will be catastrophic. What is the reaction of the United Nations and the Secretary of this warning coming from his special envoy to Libya?
He has made clear his views about this, including in his remarks to the Security Council in his briefings. So Mr. Salameh has been trying to forestall any violence happening in Tripoli, and we continue to call on all parties to exercise their influence on the various groups on the ground in Libya to make sure that such violence can be prevented.
As far as you know, the Berlin meeting on Libyan affairs is still going on, and is there any date had been determined?
As of now, the talks are underway, and we'll see what happens at the end of those.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good afternoon, everyone.